ABC7 Eyewitness News presents Vote 2023, the race for Chicago Mayor, the People's Forum. Produced in collaboration with the League of Women Voters of Chicago, the League of Women Voters of Illinois, and Univision Chicago. Now, here are our moderators, Judy Sue and Ravi Baichwal.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Forum, a one-hour discussion tonight with the candidates for Chicago Mayor. I'm Judy Sue.
And I'm Ravi Baichwal. Welcome. And joining us tonight are the two remaining candidates ahead of this April 4th runoff in Chicago. And they are the Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson and former Chicago Public Schools CEO Paul Vallas.
This debate is produced in partnership with the League of Women Voters of Chicago, the League of Women Voters of Illinois, and also Univision Chicago. And helping us to ask questions here tonight are ABC7 political reporter Craig Wall and Univision Chicago anchor Alex Hernandez. Also joining us tonight, take a look. We welcome members of 21 additional community groups from right here in Chicago.
That's right. Those groups are, let's go through them now because we have great representation. Access Living, ACLU Illinois, the Better Government Association, the Chinese American Service League, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, Chicago Coalition of the Homeless, Chicago Federation of Labor, and also the Chicago Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights is here tonight. Chicago United here, the Chicago Urban League, Chicago Votes, El Valor, the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Metropolitan Family Services. As well, we're joined by the Mikvah Challenge, Mujeres Latinas en Acción, the People for Community Recovery, Rainbow Push, the Shriver Center on Poverty Law, and the Southeast Environmental Task Force. As well, we have the YWCA, Metropolitan Chicago, and some of these groups are going to be asking some of the questions directly tonight.
Yes, we thank all of them for being here tonight. So now here are the ground rules for tonight. The candidates will each have 1 minute to answer each question. The candidate who answers first will then get a chance for a 30-second rebuttal. Roughly halfway through this debate, each candidate will also have the opportunity to ask a question of their opponent and then have the chance for a rebuttal. Time permitting, we will also pose some lightning round questions that require only short answers. We will then close this debate with each candidate getting 1 minute for a closing statement. Question order tonight was determined by ballot order, so tonight Brandon Johnson will be answering first. Let's go ahead and get started right now with the People's Forum tonight with the first question now coming from Craig Wall. Craig.
Good evening, candidates. Crime is consistently listed as one of the top concerns in this election, and although the number of murders is down over the last 2 years, overall violent crime is up 47% from last year and 60% from 4 years ago. Each of you has frequently articulated your plan for dealing with crime, but what specifically will you do to make people feel safe as we head into the summer season when crime typically spikes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Look, it's a serious problem. We're all facing it every single day. Many of you know that I'm raising my family on the west side of Chicago, and we love it, my wife and I, raising our 3 children. And as much as we love the west side of the city of Chicago, it is one of the most violent neighborhoods, the Austin community, in the entire city. And that's why my plan for public safety is comprehensive. 1, we're going to train and promote 200 more detectives so we can actually solve crime. 2, we're going to make sure that we spend to implement the consent decree. There are many failures there that continue to persist. We're going to fix that. 3rd, we're going to make sure that we are actually enforcing the laws that are on the books. Red flag laws, right? Where individuals who are accessing guns, they should not have them. But we're also going to take a long-term approach as well. When it comes to prevention and the data that actually has proven to work, youth employment, and I'm going to do that, double the amount of young people that we hire, there's a direct correlation between youth employment and violence reduction. We're going to pass treatment, not trauma, open up our mental health centers, and of course, we're going to make sure that we're creating jobs because economic stability is safety.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vallas. Same question.
Well, very good. And well, first of all, you've got to get at the underlying causes of crime, but there is no substitute to returning to community-based policing. You can't have 911 calls being responded to in 3 hours as opposed to 3 minutes because there are not enough beat cars. You can't have confidence in the safety of public transportation when there are not police officers on the platforms and police officers at the stations. The bottom line is my opponent wants to defund the police. He doesn't want to fill the 1,100 vacancies. He does not want to bring back retired officers or invite other officers who have left to return without any loss of seniority. So at the end of the day, what you've got to do is you've got to fill the ranks, you've got to fill those vacancies, and you've got to deploy the police into the community so that there are officers there to respond when those 911 calls are made. 32,000 high priority 911 calls, assaults and batteries were not responded to last year because there were not cars available, and you've got to make public transportation safe.
Okay, 30 seconds back to Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not going to defund the police. Never said it, right? But what we're going to do is train and promote 200 more detectives because we're not solving crime in the city of Chicago, especially in black and brown poor communities. The best way to engender confidence with public safety, you got to catch people. But we also have to make sure that we're investing in people. There's a direct correlation. If it comes to preventing crime in the city of Chicago, let's hire young people. Let's demonstrate that we actually value them. But we also have to make sure that we're providing mental health support for law enforcement, for the people of the city of Chicago, because the type of trauma that we're experiencing in the city of Chicago because of disinvestment is why crime is so high.
Thank
I have
you.
a comprehensive plan that gets at the root causes and the immediate crisis.
We will continue this discussion. Paul Vallas will be answering our next question here, and it is coming from Alex Hernandez.
And we're going to talk about the youth, actually, because juvenile crime in the city continues to be a big problem here in Chicago. Every week, the youth as young as 12 years old are involved in shootings, robberies, or other type of delinquent activity. How will you as a mayor help prevent young people from committing crimes and become repeated offenders?
Well, first of all, juvenile crime has risen dramatically since 2019 because schools were effectively shut down for 15 consecutive months, long after the science had demonstrated that the schools could be reopened safely. And of course, schools all over the state reopened far before the Chicago Public Schools did. But what I would do is I would open campuses through the dinner or on weekends, over the summer, during the holidays, and bring community-based programs onto the campuses so the kids would have a safe and secure place to go. I would also introduce, and I've talked about this many times, universal work study. So the high school kids would have an opportunity to participate in paid work study jobs. I've talked to all 12 of the labor unions that are endorsing me about creating such programs, and I require city agencies and city departments and city contractors to create work study opportunities too. What I would also do is open the schools that have been closed to create alternative schools for the tens of thousands of young people, 18 to 25, who have exited the system and are either not in school or they do not have jobs because they need an opportunity to re-enter the system.
Okay, thank you. 1 minute for Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, look, I'm a teacher. I've looked into the eyes of young people who have experienced trauma and they feel a little less hope. And that's why I'm committed to making sure that we double the amount of young people that we hire. It's a proven data point that if we want to prevent young people from participating and engaging in many of the behavior that they've been accused of, is that we have to actually invest in them. There's a direct correlation between youth employment and violence reduction. But we also have to have someone who believes in public education, right? And so what I'm going to do as the mayor of the city of Chicago to make sure that we are implementing and instituting the trades into our schools so that our children have a pathway to economic opportunity. But we're also going to make sure that the jobs that are available now, particularly our manufacturing jobs, 55,000 vacancies right now. We can close the gap between graduation and economic opportunity by actually having someone who believes that it's worth investing in people. And that's what my public safety plan calls for, and that's what my education plan calls for.
Thank you. Rebuttal, Mr. Vallas.
Yeah, you know, schools shut down for 15 consecutive months. Schools that close at 3:30 in the afternoons. Schools that are closed over the weekends. Schools that are closed through the summer, through most of the summer and during the holidays. That's not investing in people. And what I've talked about doing is returning the money to the local schools under the control of the local school councils and the principals. Only 60% of the $30,000 a year that is spent per student on public education finds its way into the classroom. Ask a Chicago public school teacher whether or not they think they're getting $30,000 per student.
Okay, we appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Vallas. Our next question here will go back to Brandon Johnson answering first, and it is now coming from our audience here in the studio where Ravi is.
All right, Judy, thanks very much. And this is Brian Johnson from Metropolitan Family Services, and he's got that question. Brian, what is your question?
Community-based violence intervention, CVI, has been proven to be an effective tool in combating gun violence in cities like New York and Los Angeles. Chicago has built a network of CVI programs that are showing great promise. Are you committed to keeping and funding those appropriately?
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thanks for the question. And just for all clarity, no relation. Good to see you, Brother Brian. Look, as I said before, violence is a very serious problem in the city of Chicago. It's a problem all over the country. That's why, as Cook County Commissioner, we've invested under my leadership when we built the budget for Black Lives, Justice for Black Lives resolution. We have $100 million that's dedicated to violence prevention because that's what works. What has failed us is the politics of old. And as my opponent talks about school closings, well, he set up the market for schools to be closed. He got so good at it, he went all around the country doing it. It's not a coincidence that where violence is pervasive, it's where schools have been closed and where schools have been privatized. All of this is connected. And so making sure that we're actually investing in people, jobs, economic opportunities, and the people who actually have been experiencing this type of trauma get to help to lead how we actually come up out of this trauma. So I'm very much committed to doing what I've always said I'm going to do, because I've already done it, is invest in people.
Okay, Mr. Vallas, 1 minute.
Well, let me answer your question. First of all, absolutely. And we have to spend the money that we're appropriating. As you know, we've had forums when we've talked about the fact that a lot of money was appropriated, but it was actually not spent. So we have to commit to spending the money that's appropriated. But let me respond. The only one up here who's ever closed schools is my opponent. I opened 78 school buildings in 6 years because our enrollment was growing by 40,000, 125,000 more kids today. Have you ever been to New Orleans? Did you ever see New Orleans after Katrina? 80% of those schools were destroyed. I actually had to build a school district out of nothing from scratch. And I had to negotiate with the Bush administration the $2 billion FEMA settlement so we could rebuild the schools. Today in New Orleans, every single child is in either a brand new school or a completely renovated public school governed by local community boards. That's a fact. And that school district led the state for 7 consecutive years after Katrina, where after COVID, only 6% of the black children in the Chicago public schools are computing at national norms.
Thank you, Mr. Vallas. 30 seconds back to you, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I have been to New Orleans, and I'm going to take a vacation there once I get elected as mayor of the city of Chicago. But here's the reality, though. People from New Orleans actually came here to Chicago today, Paul, to talk about your failures. The truth of the matter is you privatized 2/3 of the district, which caused scores of black women to be laid off because of your failures. Look, the entire economy shut down from a 100-year pandemic. We did that because we had to save lives. And so I know it's a fair Republican talking point because that's a part of your party.
Okay.
But the truth of the matter is, if we're going to have a better, stronger, safer Chicago, we have to invest in people.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We do have many more questions coming from the audience tonight. We're just getting started. But now let's get back to Craig Wall with Paul Vallas answering our next question first. Craig.
The Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability recently launched a nationwide search for a new police superintendent. What will be your priorities for the next person who will lead the department, and how do you plan to address the morale issue that has contributed to the depleted police ranks?
Well, the way you do that, first of all, I will promote from within, and I will advocate for a candidate from within. I've met with the police officers up and down the ranks. I helped negotiate an 8-year contract without compensation that included all the accountability provisions that were being demanded by the reformers. So I believe basically that we need to promote from within the ranks at all levels, all the exempt ranks, based on time and grade and experience. I also believe that once you restore the police to a normal schedule, once you return to community-based policing where the officers are working their beats and not being moved all over the city, and once you support the police, and I'm talking about the type of proactive policing where you're arresting people for serious crimes, because ask police officers whether or not they feel that they can arrest for serious crimes. With only a 5% clearance rate, obviously they are being intimidated. Once you do that, you're going to significantly slow the exit of officers, and hundreds of officers who have retired will return, and hundreds of officers who have transferred to other police departments will also return. You'll be able to flood the ranks again.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, look, I have very, very basic principles that I live by. And this is what I'm looking for in a police superintendent: someone who is compassionate, someone who is collaborative, and someone who is competent. Someone who is tethered to the city of Chicago, who understands the dynamics of the city of Chicago. Right now, we don't have smart policing, right? Here's what's actually disturbing. We talk about raising the morale of the workforce, and particularly law enforcement. Almost 40% of the 911 calls that come through are mental health crises calls. And so we're asking police officers to not only do their job, but someone else's. They're not social workers. They're not counselors, marriage therapists. I've served on the front line as a public school teacher in the city of Chicago, and I've seen firsthand what that trauma entails. And so we have to free up law enforcement to be able to focus on the more violent offenses. But we also have to have someone as a police superintendent that recognizes that you can't have supervisors who supervise the supervisors. Most police officers do not know who they're reporting to day in and day out. It's like as a public school teacher, if your principal changed every other day, you don't have direction.
Thank you.
My superintendent will have direction.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Smart policing is not defunding the policing. Smart policing is not filling the 1,100 vacancies. Smart policing is not promoting 200 detectives thinking that that's going to solve the problem. New York has 6,000 detectives. That's not smart policing. Smart policing is filling the vacancies and pushing the police officers down to the local beats so they can respond within minutes of a 911 call, and so that people can travel public transportation secure that the police officers are there if they have emergencies.
All right. Brandon Johnson will be answering our next question here first. This one is coming from Alex Hernandez.
The 22nd ward, which includes Little Village, had one of the lowest turnouts in the past general elections, indicating that the voters in that district feel unheard and not protected, especially after street vendors continue to be the target of robberies in the early hours. How would you build relationship with the underserved communities and better protect them?
Yeah, thank you for that. Look, all of us are struggling in the city of Chicago. Particularly communities have been hit hard by environmental injustice. Communities have been hit hard because the property taxes continue to go up. And that's why I'm committed to making sure that we're not raising property taxes to keep families in the city of Chicago. But we also have to promote and train 200 more detectives to solve crime. Paul doesn't believe that hiring people to solve crime solves crime. That doesn't make any sense. For these small vendors, know that you will have a mayor in me that's willing to listen, to actually help come up and devise a plan that the community can get around. But here's the harsh reality, that the fact that we are not safe in the city of Chicago has everything to do with the failures of old. We cannot wait 2 years for police officers to show up in places like Pilsen, Little Village, or Austin, or Inglewood. It takes up to 2 years to become a police officer in the city of Chicago. We need safety right now.
Okay, thank
Under
you.
Paul Vallas'
Thank
plan,
you.
he makes us wait 2 years.
Thank you. Better protecting our underserved communities, Mr. Vallas.
Yeah, you know, I really have to respond to this. I come from a family of 4 police officers, 2 firefighters, 3 teachers, 6 veterans, including myself. It takes 6 months to put a new police officer on the street, not 2 years. And secondly, if you restore the morale in the police department, you won't have 1,000 officers leaving a year. You'll go back to having 300. So then you can be recruiting double the number of officers that are exiting. And number 3, there are police officers who will return once you restore morale. Now, if you want to protect the vendors, you have to have patrols. You have to have beat integrity. You have to have a car on that beat that can respond within minutes and actually make arrests and feel that they're not going to be punished when they make arrests. I've been out there. I've talked to those vendors. Those vendors had a forum in my office basically to talk to me about what their concerns are. And their concerns is that there are no consequences for them being intimidated or threatened, and that when they call, sometimes it takes 2 to 3 hours for the police to respond.
Would you like to respond, Mr. Johnson?
Of course
30
I
seconds.
would. Thank you. It takes 18 months to become a police officer. For someone who's actually won an election and actually had to balance and manage multi-billion-dollar budgets, just the forest preserves law enforcement alone, it took up to 1 year to become law enforcement in the forest preserves. And it should take 18 months. Look, if we reduce the standards of what it takes to become a police officer, we wouldn't have the best quality of officers on the front lines. If Paul Vallas believes that it only takes 6 months to be a police officer, that is all the reason you need to know City of Chicago. He is not fit to be the mayor of the City of Chicago.
That's our time for that question. Thank you.
Okay.
We are now heading back to our audience for another question with Paul Vallas now answering the next question first. Ravi.
All right, Judy, thanks very much. Joined now by Jaime De Paulo from the Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Nice to see you, Jaime. You have a question here, and go ahead.
Yes, thank you. The recent pandemic and current economic climate has really been hard on Latinos trying to start small businesses. In fact, we have lost many small businesses because of the pandemic, and just now that we keep losing businesses left and right. How will you foster opportunities for Latinos entrepreneurs and business owners who are looking to realize the American dream, especially evening the playing field and the procurement process in the city?
Well, great. Thank you for that question. A number of ways. The first thing is to remove the obstacles to people actually getting licensed and getting processed. I mean, the bureaucracy, the business bureaucracy at City Hall, the regulatory bureaucracy is stifling, and that is a common concern. That's number one. Number two, by basically providing those businesses with an opportunity to participate in city contracting. When I ran the Chicago Public Schools, 55% of all of our construction contracts, $1.74 billion, went to Black and Latino and women-owned businesses, and 40% of our professional service contracts and our purchasing went to those businesses. So by fostering those businesses and giving those businesses priority. Number three, by capping their property taxes. Just not capping the levy, but capping the individual property taxes. We all can talk about capping the levy, but as you know, in the very community that you make references to, their property taxes, despite the alleged city cap, are skyrocketing because of gentrification, and they need to be protected individually. When I was city budget director, I did not increase property taxes once.
That's our time. Same question. Better opportunities for those seeking the American dream.
Yeah, this is an important part of the city of Chicago. The economic corridors that minorities, women-owned businesses offer to the city of Chicago, it's unmatched anywhere else in the world, quite frankly. And so this is why I've made a very strong commitment that one, we have to meet our 50% goals for minority, women-owned businesses. But two, here's the important part. We need to make sure that the legendary vendors actually recruit small businesses to participate in the economic opportunities as well. But we also have to end this reimbursement practice and actually offer grants, right? So that we can actually jumpstart these economic opportunities. And also, here's what we also have to do. We have to create more W-2s, right? So that individuals who imbibe the entrepreneur spirit, that they will have the savings to actually jumpstart those businesses, but also have a clientele for individuals who can actually be customers to these small businesses. But we also have to make sure that our legacy vendors are supportive, and we also have to make sure that we are providing micro grants so that we are not leaving small businesses behind.
30 seconds, Mr. Vallas.
Well, look, you're not going to promote businesses by reimposing the head tax, which taxes small businesses. That is not a tax to rich tax. You're not going to help small businesses. You're not going to help businesses in general by increasing the hotel motel tax by 66%, which of course is part of my opponent's $800 million tax plan. Hotel motels are already paying the highest taxes in the country, and they have barely survived that they've come close to recovering from COVID. So at the end of the day, you know, simply imposing $800 million in new taxes is not going to solve the problem.
That's our time. But we will continue this discussion right now. Brandon Johnson will start with our next question. It is coming from R. Craig Wall.
You've both partially addressed this, but we'll ask it more directly. Last year, Mayor Lori Lightfoot skipped a property tax increase, which in part helps pay for pensions. She cited better than expected revenues. With people struggling with inflation, though, will you firmly commit to not raising property taxes? And if so, where will you get the money needed to take care of those pension obligations?
Yeah, look, I put forth the budget plan. I'm the only one who's done it. Paul Vallas put forth the budget plan 4 years ago. He said he was going to raise property taxes by $250 million. He comes in 9th place. Voila, he doesn't present it. On his website, there are 3 sentences. Here are my values. We eliminate the structural deficit that Paul Vallas caused, right? We make up to $1 billion of new investments because that's what it takes for a better, stronger city. And we do it without raising property taxes. Look, there's a very fundamental democratic principle. Democrats all over the country believe that the wealthy in this city and this country have to put more skin in the game and pay their fair share in taxes. President Biden said that a teacher and a firefighter should not pay the same tax rate as a billionaire. The reason why Paul Vallas is avoiding this dynamic is because he is supported by billionaires, right? The way we get out of this structural deficit is by doing what works, eliminating the deficit that he caused, create up to $1 billion of new investments, and we do it without raising property taxes.
It is Mr. Vallas' turn now.
Oh my God, I haven't been budget director in 20 years. I'm surprised he's not criticizing me for being behind the grassy knoll in Dallas. I mean, at the end of the day, my opponent wants to raise $800 million in property taxes, and he's not taxing the rich. The head tax is not taxing the rich. The hotel motel tax is not taxing the rich. Talking about imposing a city income tax, whether it's on all residents or commuters, is not taxing the rich, let's face it. So at the end of the day, I have balanced multi-billion-dollar budgets without raising property taxes. The amount of money that the city controls, $28 billion, if you're the first step out of the box, particularly given the economic uncertainty that we're facing, is we're going to raise property taxes, we're going to raise taxes by $800 million. I mean, that's just ridiculous. The mayor controls $28 billion in spending and over $1 billion in TIF spending. And over the last 3 years, there's been $1 billion in TIF surpluses that has been at the discretion of the mayor. If you knew something about budgets, you would know that the first priority priority is to assess and evaluate how those budgets can be spent more effectively.
That's our time, rebuttal.
Yeah, look, I've passed multi-billion-dollar budgets. You clearly don't know much about budgets because everywhere you've gone, you have failed. Look, I'm not going to raise property taxes. There is no income tax in my plan. He's being dishonest. As far as a hotel motel tax, we're talking about adding $1 per room. $1 per room. Look, I was raised in the 80s. My father is as frugal as they come. Even my dad can find $1, right? But here's the reality. If we're going to have a better, stronger, safer Chicago, do what safe American cities do. Invest in people.
Thank you. Again, as we mentioned, 21 community groups represented here tonight. And here's another question from the audience. Paul Vallas will be answering this one first. Ravi.
All right, thank you very much, Judy. We're joined now by Karen Freeman Wilson with the Chicago Urban League right here. She used to actually be a mayor. She knows a little bit something about this. What is your question?
Good evening. Home ownership is seen by many to be the American dream. However, it's proven elusive for many in our city. What will you do to make home ownership more attainable for Chicagoans?
Mr. Vallas.
Well, very good. Well, I've talked about creating a community investment fund. Some people refer to it as a community bank, and earmarking money from tax increment financing revenues to gaming revenue to video poker revenue, which I will, seek to legalize, casino revenue, developer fee money. So there is a steady flow of money into that fund. And that fund can be used to leverage the type of loans and the type of subsidies that are needed to really create not only affordable housing, but to create home ownership. That's something that can be done on a massive scale. Right now we spend $1.2 billion in tax increment financing revenue, and very little of that money that's diverted from our property tax base every year actually goes to affordable housing or goes to providing home loans. So committing that type of money on a continual basis with primacy being given to the creation of home ownership in the most hard-pressed and neediest communities is something that I will do from day one.
1 minute for Mr. Johnson.
Well, first of all, we're going to pass Bring Chicago Home. It's an ordinance that's going to help us raise hundreds of millions of dollars to deal with this dynamic. And it's pretty straightforward. Look, we have 65,000 plus people in the city of Chicago unhoused, of which 20,000 of them are young people, are students. Passing Bring Chicago Home, a mansion tax that will raise hundreds of millions of dollars to deal with this dynamic. Do you all know that black families who make $100,000 a year or more live in less safe neighborhoods than white families who make less than $30,000 a year? And so by raising this revenue, we're going to create a pathway for home ownership by providing down payment assistance so that individuals like families like mine who are public employees have the ability to jumpstart a home. We're also going to make sure that we're building public housing, and we're going to expand the affordable housing ordinance so that we can create a pathway for more folks to actually afford to live in the city of Chicago. And we can't do it with the $2.5 billion property tax bill that Paul Vallas left the residents of the city of Chicago.
Rebuttal, Mr. Vallas?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out where that came from. At the end of the day, look, we have got to allocate TIF monies so that we can promote investment in the poorest communities. They have been historically underserved. And when you have a $1 billion surplus over a 3-year period, there's no reason why you can't prioritize those communities and you can't earmark money on a consistent basis over the next 15 or 20 years to those very communities. We also have to remove the obstacles to affordable housing, and
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for abiding by our time cards.
Okay.
As we mentioned earlier, each candidate will have a chance to ask the other a question directly. So now is that time. Brandon Johnson will go first. You'll have 30 seconds to ask your question to Paul Vallas.
Yeah, Paul, today, many of my supporters gathered on the south side of Chicago, folks from New Orleans, Philadelphia, Chicago, to talk about their negative experience with you leading. And there were individuals with Paul Vallas signs who accosted seniors right outside this event. And I want to know tonight if you would be willing to commit on television to disavow this behavior and challenge whomever these individuals are to make sure that we have a safe, healthy, discorded debate in this election season.
Yeah, let me respond. I really don't quite know what he's talking about, but I'll tell you, At most of my forums, I've had people come to disrupt my forums. In fact, at the UIC Pavilion, I continually was disrupted, particularly in my closing comments. And I've said nothing about that. I don't expect any of the individuals that are supporting me to go in and to be disruptive with other candidates. But the point is, you know, I've been the constant victim of disruptions, but I have basically weathered the storm and followed through. This is a rough and tumble campaign, and I'm sure we've got supporters on both sides that feel enthusiastic about their candidates. So that's really my response to that.
All right, 30-second rebuttal if you would like.
Well, look, we know that there are a lot of people who are animated. But we also know that January 6th was a brutal day for this country. What I'm simply asking you, Paul, is that whether it's individuals who have Paul Vallas signs or Brandon Johnson signs, I'm committing to make sure that this is done in a civil, orderly way. I'm just asking you to commit to that and disavow that behavior. That's all.
Is that a second question for me?
No, that was his 30-second rebuttal in
Okay.
response to his question. Now is your chance. We do have a question now from Paul Vallas directly to Brandon Johnson. You have 30 seconds to ask your question.
Great. So let me ask this fundamental question. How do you expect the city to grow and prosper, particularly its poorest communities, when you're talking about defunding the police and the type of defunding that will impact the poorest communities, and when you're talking about raising taxes across the board by $800 million?
Yeah, first of all, Paul, I'm not going to defund the police. And you know that. You know that. I have passed multi-billion-dollar budgets over and over again. Not going to do that. But here's the reality, Paul. You can't run a multi-billion-dollar budget off of bake sales. The fact that we have property taxes that are forcing families out of the city of Chicago in communities that are unsafe, you have to do what safe American cities do. Invest in people. Look, Paul, if you don't like my ideas in terms of how to raise revenue, then come up with one, right? We can actually collaborate now. But you have refused to offer any real budget plans of how we're going to generate revenue to save lives. And so, yes, I'm committed to saving lives. Yes, I'm committed to making sure that we have affordable housing. Yes, I'm committed to making sure that our schools are fully funded. And yes, I believe we have to pay for that. It's worth it.
Look, I'm basically debating with someone who has never managed a budget. Voting for a budget is different than putting a budget together and passing it and then implementing it. And I'm running against somebody who talks about the best job he ever had was being a teacher, and he taught for 5 years in a school that I built in Cabrini Green called Jenner, a school that I built from the ground up, and who has spent the last 10 years working and still is working as a consultant for the Chicago Teachers Union as a paid lobbyist. So please don't lecture me on managing multi-billion-dollar budgets. I've done them multiple times in many cities.
That is our time for this segment. We're going to get back to the candidates just answering the questions. We're going to head back to Alex Hernandez right now with a question for Brandon Johnson first.
Well, that was interesting. They can keep going. Actually, Mr. Johnson, earlier tonight, you said that 40% of distress calls came or were related to mental health issues. Recent surveys done by the Brighton Park Neighborhood Council show that around 94% of residents want to see a therapist. However, the number of mental health providers is not enough, especially after closing down 12 clinics in 2012. Now, we are told that there is an 8-month wait list to see a specialist that even speaks Spanish, for example. What would you do to address this problem?
Yeah, well, first of all, we have to make sure that we are committing ourselves to mental health services. We start with that. I'm going to reopen the mental health centers because that's what the people of Chicago want. We're going to pass treatment, not trauma, to make sure that we have mental health professionals showing up to the cause that, quite frankly, require mental health support. Even the Los Angeles Police Department agrees with me that we are asking police officers to do too much. The type of trauma and economic despair that we all are dealing with right now requires a mayor who is willing to invest in mental health services. And so one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to collaborate with Cook County government. I have friends over there. I'm grateful to have the support of President Preckwinkle. As I've built health centers in my district, we're building them all over the county. But we also have to make sure that individuals who have the lived experience can also participate in providing the healing and support that families need. Because they've gone through these traumatic experiences, they are the best individuals to train to put on the front line. And that's the vision and plan that I have for the city of Chicago.
Mr. Vallas, 1 minute.
Look, I've talked and articulated a plan not only to reopen the mental health centers, which were fully funded when I was city budget director, but also to open opioid and drug addiction centers and to expand the public health centers that are basically operated and monitored by the city so we can provide public health services and make them more accessible. And also to create crisis counseling centers. If you know anything about budgets, you know that if you're billing properly, if you're taking full advantage of Medicaid, if you're taking full advantage of private insurance, which is often available, many of these services can be subsidized basically through those sources. But it's been the city's continuous failure to maximize their Medicaid reimbursements, for example, and to maximize the insurance that is available in many cases so that these programs can be sustained. But we've got to recreate a social service infrastructure, and that's why I've talked about a community investment fund that, in effect, can earmark TIF revenues and other revenues to those communities that have long been underserved so we can rebuild the community-based social services.
30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, here's what I know about budgets. Paul is not good at it. In 1995, he went to Springfield to work with the Republican Party to take a dedicated revenue stream that was going into retirement security, took that dedicated revenue stream and just had a field day with it. And for a time period, here's what I know about budgets, it looked like it was working. But here's what happens though, Paul. The market fluctuates. And as the market began to crash, you ran out right when the house of cards failed. And everywhere you've gone where you've managed budgets, you've built them on sand.
That is,
and right before it collapses,
our time.
You run away.
That is our time. We will continue now.
Okay.
Mental health, certainly, that's what we were talking about, certainly has been a big part of the discussion when it comes to education, as both of you know. And that brings us to our next question here tonight, coming from Craig Wall, with Paul Vallas answering first.
Both of you come from different educational related backgrounds. Chicago Public Schools, as you both know, are battling a decline in enrollment, which could be in part attributed to concerns about the kind of education that children are getting. What will each of you do to turn that around and assure parents that their children are getting the quality education that they deserve?
Well, I think you have to do a number of things. First thing you have to do is really return to the concept of community schools. Community schools are schools that are open through the dinner on weekends, over the summer, over the holidays, and to turn those community schools into really community centers so that you're bringing park district programs, you're bringing recreational programs, memory programs, you're bringing faith-based programs to the schools. When I ran the Chicago Public Schools and the enrollment grew by 40,000, we had such programs. Schools were open till 8, 9, 10 o'clock. I secured funding from the Clinton administration to pay a third meal. And we provided work-study jobs to tens of thousands of high school kids. That's why enrollment mushroomed. That's why it opened up 78 new buildings. So at the end of the day, that's one thing you could do immediately. But you have to also push the funding down to the local school level, because right now, we spend $30,000 per student, and only 60% of that money finds its way into the classroom. So you need to return to the concept of local schools, and that means the funding follows the children to those local schools, and so that the local principals and the local school councils can make the decisions.
Declining CPS enrollment, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, look, first of all, you know, as an organizer, I work with the General Assembly to actually pass a new funding formula that is based on needs and not per pupil. Right now, the city of Chicago is leaving $1 billion on the table because CPS refuses to actually implement the law that I helped pass. So we're going to do that first. We also have $1 billion of surplus that the federal government sent us during this pandemic. There are dollars that are available to make sure that we are building sustainable community schools. That's how you transform the public school system, by giving local opportunities for the communities to determine what else is needed. But we have to have a baseline of support. I will be a mayor in the most recent history that actually believes in public education. And that's why I fought hard alongside parents, the faith community, for an elected representative school board. Here's another dynamic that we'll have in the city of Chicago that we haven't had. So it's the funding formula that we can implement, it's sustainable community schools, and it's the fact that we have expanded democracy, giving control over the Chicago public schools to the people of Chicago.
30-second rebuttal.
You know, all I know is since my departure, the district has lost 125,000 students, and during our 6 years, mine and Gary Chico's, the district grew by 40,000, and President Clinton came to town and called us a national model. I'll also point out to my opponent that I received 12 bond rating upgrades by the rating agencies. They don't increase your bond rating if you are defunding the pensions. So at the end of the day, we've got to return to the community-based school model where the money follows the kids to the local schools. And we've got to keep those schools open under any circumstances, because we've lost 11% of our enrollment since schools were shut down for 15 months.
Thank you. Our audience here patiently waiting to ask more questions here tonight. So this is going to Brandon Johnson first. Ravi.
All right, Judy, thanks very much. Yeah, we're very much packed up in here, and I'm joined by Paul Liu with the Chinese American Service League, and he's got a question. Go ahead, Paul.
The Asian American and Pacific Islander, or API community, is one of the fastest growing population, which includes more than 50 different countries speaking hundreds of languages and dialects, each with very different needs and challenges. A recent study conducted by Change Insight with Chicago nonprofit organization found significant differences among various communities. One example is that 65% of Chinese Americans surveyed are living in poverty, while 41% of the Filipino community is living in poverty, and 31% of the Pakistani community. How will your administration address the diverse needs of the API communities in a culturally appropriate manner?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And look, you know, poverty is real in this country, and I have said this repeatedly. No one should be too poor to live in one of the richest cities in one of the wealthiest countries at the richest time in the history of the world. And that's why I'm grateful to be supported by many of the Asian American leaders, many of whom are electing or have been elected in districts that express that growth. And so what I've said consistently is that we have to make sure that we're investing in people. And here's how we do it. By passing Bring Chicago Home, where many individuals need access to affordable housing. That's going to generate millions of dollars to address poverty. It's very isolating. It's horrific. And I know what that looks like. I grew up in a low-income family. I've taught in the Chicago public schools, and I've seen that type of economic despair. And so my vision for the city of Chicago is to demonstrate that we're prepared to invest in people, and particularly the Asian Pacific Islander communities that have been neglected and ignored for too long, not under my administration.
Okay, Mr. Vallas.
Well, when I've spent time in the Asian American community, I'm also receiving, I think, very strong support from that community. They talk to me about three things. They talk to me about public safety because they feel threatened, and all you have to do is look at the crime data to know that hate crimes impacting the Asian American community has skyrocketed. Secondly, they talk to me about the regulatory obstacles that are strangling small Asian businesses, all small businesses, middle-sized businesses, but I continually hear that because of the obstacles that are placed in their path. And the third thing is property taxes, because even if you freeze property taxes across the board, when you're in a community that's growing and thriving, their property taxes still go up. The property taxes just get redistributed. I mean, how do property taxes rise by 30, 40, 50% in the Latino communities and other communities when the city allegedly capped property taxes? So at the end of the day, they talk to me about those three things. But I'll tell you, the schools need to be community centers that provide many of the services that you've articulated, so children, regardless of their backgrounds, are supported.
30 seconds, back to Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, look, it comes down to someone who is willing to collaborate and listen. And the politics of old that have left families behind is why we have such a stratified city. Look, the best way I will demonstrate that the Asian American community is valued, seen, and heard is by actually investing in those communities. Because what Asian Americans want is what the Latinx community wants. It's what the African American community wants. Good schools, good paying jobs, and the ability to afford to live in the city of Chicago.
All right,
and you'll have that under my administration.
Thank you. And we will continue now with our audience question. Back to Ravi, and this one, Paul Vallas will answer first.
All right, thanks very much, Judy. And we are joined now by Jane Ruby of the League of Women Voters, our co-sponsors here for this debate. It's going quite well. What's your question?
The current city council committee system gives the mayor extraordinary power over the city's legislative agenda. The mayor essentially appoints committee chairs who have the sole power to decide what is placed on the committee meeting's agenda. Measures must first pass out of committee before coming up for a vote before the full city council. As mayor, would you be willing to let committee members select their committee chair, who in consultation with colleagues would set the committee's agenda?
Mr. Vallas.
Yes, yes, absolutely. In fact, I've met with the various caucuses, and I've talked to them about doing that very same thing. In fact, I'd like for them to actually select a leader, almost like a speaker of the council, so to speak. And I think that should be the natural order of things. I also think the council needs to be strengthened. because they don't have the ability to do independent analysis of either the budget or, for that matter, the ComEd deal that was slapped on their desk or the parking meter deal. And you can go through the array of things that have come from the 5th floor at the last minute, the casino deal. They lack the capacity because there's not a process set up for them to hold hearings, to deliberate, for them to analyze. There's no process like the Congressional Budget Office process that really dictates that the council or that the legislative bodies have the ability and the resources to analyze and evaluate proposals that come before them. So it's not only about empowering them to select their chairs, it's also about giving them the tools to challenge the mayor. You need to have a balance of power, and it needs to be restored, and it will happen when I'm mayor.
A more independent city council, Mr. Johnson.
Look, I believe in co-governance. It's not just about making sure that the city council has equal share in the responsibility of how we bring about a better, stronger, safer city. See, here's the challenge around this question. That the question was asked about how do we collaborate, not about power. This is about economic, racial, and social justice. That as the mayor of the city of Chicago, I get to set the tone for the entire city. And yes, I will work with the city council to figure out an infrastructure that provides the type of balance of responsibility, not a balance of power. Look, we have serious problems in the city of Chicago right now. There's a reason why we don't feel safe. The economic despair that has occurred over the course of a generation now have left families behind. It's going to take all of us to figure out how we have a better, stronger, safer Chicago. I've collaborated with City Council. We're going to collaborate with Springfield. We're going to collaborate with county government. Okay. Every single level of government will have a shared responsibility in building a better, stronger, safer Chicago.
Vallas.
Look, you've got to give the City Council the ability to think independently. And that means access to information, access to staffing, access to data. And they don't have it right now. So they're at the behold. They're beholden to the mayor. They have no choice. And look, I'm a product of the legislative process. Dawn Clark-Netsch, the Senate Democrats. I appreciate and respect the legislative process. I'm talking about institutionalizing the city council's authority so that they can challenge the mayor. Because right now we live in an imperial mayor system where whatever comes from the 5th floor is almost automatically approved by the city council.
We have one final question here tonight coming from the audience. Brandon Johnson will be answering this one first. Ravi.
They're raring to ask their questions here for sure, and I'm joined right now by April Harris with the Chicago Coalition of the Homeless with a very important question. Go ahead, Ed.
Hi, good evening. There is an affordable housing crisis in the city of Chicago. Over 65,000 people are experiencing homelessness in the city today, 75% of which are ineligible for federally funded housing because they are living doubled up. If unable to stay doubled up with family or friends, many will seek refuge on CTA or in tent cities where they are at risk of being criminalized simply because they have nowhere else to go. As mayor, what would you do to address our housing crisis and generate the resources we need to create permanent affordable housing with wraparound services for those experiencing homelessness?
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you for that question, April. You know, look, we have to pass, and within the first 100 days of my administration, bring Chicago home. That's the difference between me and my opponent. You know, he's accusing me of wanting to raise revenue so that people actually have a home. The fact that we are debating whether or not housing is a human right, it tells you why we cannot rely upon the vestiges of the past. That also includes expanding the affordable housing ordinance to make sure that there is more access to affordable housing units. And here's the cool thing. With all the vacancy that we have in the city of Chicago, we can build a workforce development, put people to work, and actually put those homes back on the market with an incentive for down payment so folks can actually experience the American dream. We can literally solve public safety in the city of Chicago by putting people to work, repairing the vacancy, and making it affordable. People get homes, people get jobs, and our city is safer.
Mr. Vallas, 1 minute.
So let me respond with specifics here. As I mentioned, $1.1 billion in TIF diversions every year and $1 billion in TIF surpluses the last 3 years. There's no reason why we can't earmark tax increment financing money to invest in affordable housing right now, number one. The second thing is we can remove the obstacles to affordable housing, and we can enforce the existing ordinances that are on the books and even consider expanding them, number two. Number three, we can get the CHA into the affordable housing game. Nobody runs the CHA. They're selling their property to sports teams at the end of the day. They have thousands of vacant units that they have not made available to individuals who are homeless. Fourth is we can unleash apartment owners, over 100,000 of whom have unimproved spaces that could be converted to garden units. So you could literally create over 100,000 affordable units in a year or two. And the fifth thing is we got to cap property taxes, because property taxes are driving people out of their homes.
Rebuttal, Mr. Johnson?
Look, I get it. I do. My older brother Leon, my hero, died addicted and unhoused because of untreated trauma. This is not just about securing homes. This is about full wraparound services. It's a difference between me and Paul. Like, he doesn't fully understand the full impact of what it means to grow up in trauma. And so that's why it's not just about bringing Chicago home and raising the revenue to do that. It's about opening our mental health centers, creating job opportunities, reliable transportation, so that we have an entire community that is built around lives that have been ignored for too long, not under a Brandon Johnson administration.
All right.
Thank you,
We do
April.
have time right now for one more question from our panel here tonight. We'll go to Paul Vallas first, and it comes from Alex Hernandez.
Very important topic as well. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development ruled last year that the city of Chicago is involved in environmental racist land use practices and is demanding that Chicago change its unlawful planning, zoning, and land use policies so they don't discriminate against communities of color. If elected, will you agree to work on a plan to overhaul Chicago's land use processes and policies and put an end to polluting Black and brown communities?
Mr. Vallas.
Yeah, absolutely. The answer is yes. But let me point out that you're not going to be able to accomplish that until you recreate and restore a Department of Environmental Protection, which I fully funded and expanded when I was city budget director. Then Mayor Emanuel got rid of it. And you have to give that department the independence and autonomy they need to ensure that there's environmental justice, to work with HUD independent of the city so they can enforce. The HUD directives, and they can follow the HUD guidelines, because clearly there is environmental racism going on. But that EPA needs to do other things. They need to get the lead out of the water. They need to get water filtration systems into the households of poor families. It's going to take decades to replace the lead pipes. They need to address the issue of food deserts. They need to champion that, even if that means that the city has to open its own community co-ops, basically, where the city opens those stores that provide healthy foods for communities. And you need a EPA department that's going to drive a climate change strategy that's realistic and can be implemented.
Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, I'm going to fully fund and expand the Department of the Environment in the city of Chicago, fully fund and staff it. But within the first 100 days of my administration, we're going to pass a cumulative impact study so that we have a complete analysis of the entire environmental climate dynamic in the city of Chicago. That's important. Look, I went on a hunger strike to keep Diet High School open. And the impetus behind that school was for green technology, urban farms, composting. It's also about making sure that our public school system is preparing our young people for the type of green technology and economic opportunities that will come as a result of a more transformational approach towards our environment. And that is making sure that we are retrofitting our buildings and that we are upgrading all of our systems. It's also making sure, of course, that we're creating jobs by removing the lead out of the pipes, especially in our old infrastructure. Environmental justice, climate justice is a human right. Making sure that we actually have a full plan to implement it under my administration, we're committed to doing that.
30 seconds back to Mr. Vallas.
Let me restate what I said, only with a greater emphasis. We not only need to create an independent EPA, and we need to do a comprehensive environmental study, but there are things that we can do right now, immediately, that will have an impact. You know, we don't have to wait for more studies. We are overwhelmed with studies. We need a strong environmental protection agency that can be controlled by an independent board, that can have autonomy from the city, that can almost have the power of an inspector general to go in and ensure that environmental justice becomes becomes institutionalized and ingrained into everything that the city does.
Thank you. And now we are going to switch over to our lightning round here tonight. Each candidate will now have 30 seconds to answer this next question. You will not get a chance for a rebuttal. Paul Vallas will begin, And we have time for one question here in just a few words. How would you describe your leadership style, Mr. Vallas?
Inclusive. My style is to really draw people from the community and to put people in the position of leadership who have expertise, who are vested in the community, who have a track record, and are known and supported. I've done that in every single one of my administrative responsibilities. I did it in Chicago. I did it in Philadelphia. I did it in New Orleans. I've always drawn from within the community because my leadership has never been a solo act. It's always been a collective act, and it's because I've been smart enough to realize that I need people drawn from the community.
30 seconds. Your leadership style, Mr. Johnson.
As a teacher, organizer, and a Cook County Commissioner, I believe it's pretty simple and straightforward. Collaborative, compassionate, and competent. Look, I'm a teacher, so I plan. I make plans for my plans. Because when you teach middle school in the city of Chicago, you better have a plan. I also grew up in a home with 9 brothers and sisters. My parents were also foster parents. We had 1 bathroom. I learned early in life how to negotiate, especially with my 4 sisters.
Okay, that's our time. And that now brings us to almost the end of our People's Forum. We're going to wrap up tonight with both candidates getting 1 minute for a closing statement, and we start right now with Paul Vallas.
Okay. Look, I think the contrast in candidates has never been clearer. I mean, I'm running against someone who believes that the police should be defunded, who doesn't want to fill the vacancies and things. 200 detectives are magically going to solve our problem. At the end of the day, I want to fill the vacancies. I want to invite returning retirees and officers who have moved to other police districts to return. I want to restore the concept of community-based policing, and I want to deprivatize the private security that are not keeping the CTA safe and bring those individuals, and use that funding to bring police officers to the CTA platforms and to the stations. There's no bigger priority than public safety. And I want to take this $28 billion monstrosity of a budget that the mayor actually controls, and I want to allocate that budget in ways that can invest in communities while holding the line on taxes. Because at the end of the day, an increasingly unaffordable city is not a city that's conducive to economic development.
All right, thank you. 1 minute closing statement, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. This has been an incredible evening. Look, yeah, the contrast couldn't be clearer. The politics of old that has been incompetent, it's been a failure, it's been an absolute mess. The city of Chicago cannot afford to go back to the status quo. Look, I've lived the failures of the politics of old, where schools have been closed, where mental health centers have been shut down, our public transportation is unreliable, it's unsafe. But I'm confident, you all, that we can build a better, stronger, safer Chicago, and we can do it together. I'm confident that we can have fully funded neighborhood schools, a reliable and safe transportation system, mental health services, good paying jobs and affordable housing, an environment that actually works for everyone. We can actually solve crime in the city of Chicago with my plan. There's a reason why my candidacy has caught fire, where we have hundreds of volunteers, thousands of volunteers, hundreds of donors that are coming together to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. We can do it together. BrandonForChicago.com. I'm counting on your vote, Chicago.
Mr. Johnson, thank you. And that does bring us to the conclusion of this debate. Really a great discussion here tonight. Our big thanks to both of the candidates for joining us here tonight. And thank you to the community groups that joined us for tonight's forum, especially the questions that they contributed.
Yeah, they're very thoughtful indeed. And a reminder that the runoff election scheduled for April 4th polls are going to be open on Election Day, 6 in the morning. They run till 7 at night. Early voting beginning on March 20th. And you can find lots more information by heading to the website IllinoisVotersGuide.org. Once again, thanks so much for joining us right here.
Yes, make sure to get out and vote. Thank you.